In 2008, a lot of important firsts happened. China hosted the Olympics for the first time. The first private spacecraft was launched into orbit. The first African-American president was elected. And on July 11th of that year, there was another important first. The price of oil hit $147 a barrel, the highest price the world has ever seen.
When oil began to go over about $80 a barrel in 2007, we saw something very interesting happening. All the other prices for all the other goods and services started to go up.
Most of the people who follow the price of oil for a living say it's headed for $100 a barrel, and quickly, as early as tomorrow, and that will be very bad for virtually every facet of American life.
When oil hit about $122, $123 a barrel in early 2008, we had food riots, you recall, in 22 countries.
Let's take a look at the oil market itself. Today, the price, as we told you, we'll tell you again before this show's over, $132 a barrel.
When oil hit $147 a barrel in July of 2008, all the prices across the supply chain for everything we buy went through the roof. And in that month, July 2008, purchasing power shut down all over the world.
It seems that everything is costing more.
Food costs expected to rise 4% this year.
And since everything you buy in a store gets there in a truck powered by diesel fuel, you'll probably pay more for things at the store because of that.
Half of America makes less than $50,000 a year for their families. When oil prices rise, their pocketbooks are constrained almost instantly.
You got to choose. Do you want to go rent movies or go to the movies with your kids, or do you want to, buy gas and be able to make it to work? So it gets rough.
A lot of people, have to choose between medicine and groceries and gas, so it hurts.
Es imposible para mí, para mi familia, llenar mi tanque.
Whatever happens to the price of oil, it has a dramatic impact on every American that has a car, on every business that needs fuel. It ripples through our economy.
Just 60 days after oil hit $147 a barrel, there was another first. For the first time in history, the stock market fell a record 777 points in a single day.
The worst day on Wall Street. The market fell as if down a well.
We're down over 16%.
Because we're now down 43%.
The Dow traders are standing there watching in amazement, and I don't blame them.
We have hit an end game for the era of crude oil, and that was July 2008 at $147 a barrel. And that was the economic earthquake. The collapse of the financial markets 60 days later, that was the aftershock. And so every time we try to regrow the global economy at the same rate we were growing before July 2008, oil prices will go up, all the other prices for everything we buy will go up, and it'll shut down over and over again.
So here's a chart of the S&P 500 tracking along with gas prices, you can see there. Now here's the thing. In the past 4 instances when gas prices have actually exceeded $4 a gallon, that is when it really starts to hit the consumer's wallet. And look, historically, you can see that the S&P has pulled back as well.
Going back 30 or 40 years, every time the price of oil has made a dramatic movement, it has been followed by a recession in the United States, without an exception.
I've prepared a graph, and it traces the U.S. unemployment rate and the price of oil adjusted for inflation from 1970 to today. And you can see the two graphs go like this. Every time the price of oil goes up, a few months later, unemployment soars.
So we have this catch-22. When the oil price is low, that stimulates economic activity. That creates more demand for oil. As demand increases, price of oil goes up. And the next thing you know, we have a financial crisis, and we start the cycle again.
Every 4 or 5 years, we're in these cycles of growth, slowdown, growth, slowdown. That's the end game.
With gasoline so expensive and the economy in crisis, consumers stopped buying big American cars and switched to smaller models.
And going back to the oil crisis, all of the big three were interested in making big vehicles, except people didn't want to buy them. They wanted to buy cars that were fuel efficient.
By June of 2009, General Motors filed for bankruptcy.
General Motors, the Detroit stalwart, once the world's largest corporation, died today. It was 100 years old.
4 years after the collapse of GM, the city where our love affair with the car began went bust.
Individuals go bankrupt, businesses do it too all the time, but entire cities?
This is enormous. This is the largest municipality ever in the history of this country to file for bankruptcy.
As a kid growing up in Detroit, the world consisted of the big three, GM, Ford, and Chrysler, the center of all things cars, all powerful, all rich. That was it. There's no need to look anywhere else. It was hard to imagine anything but the big three were in charge. I grew up in a city with big, beautiful homes, sprawling front lawns, beautiful tree-lined streets. I go back to Detroit today and it's a sad, sad story. All those beautiful homes wiped out, boarded up, burned out, torn down, empty lots. I bring people from overseas, whether it's from Europe or Asia here, and they say, was there a war here? What happened? Now, these used to be bustling, thriving communities. Look at it now.
There's a lot of despair in the city of Detroit. I think the hope of the average person for a better life has disappeared. And the 2008 economic crisis exacerbated every economic problem that the city had to the point of no return. I find it ironic that the industry that built Detroit is the same industry that destroyed Detroit. We all have to scratch our heads at the decisions that they made.
Detroit went bust for numerous reasons. But nobody can deny that a city so singularly dependent on big cars and the cheap fuel to run them was destined to fail.
I really hope the rest of America stands up and takes note. This is real, and if you don't watch it, it can happen in your backyard too.
He can hear the clock ticking. The prices are higher, the supplies are running out, and what we've got to come to grips with is that it's the end of the oil age. This is the sunset.
And that means it's not coming back. It's over. It's absolutely over. I have no doubt about that.
There's an entire army of people who have been trying to shout from the sidelines and get our country and our policymakers to adopt an intelligent solution to our problem. It hasn't happened. We've got war. We've got environmental crisis. We've got climate change. We've got political instability. We've been weakened as a nation. Our pockets have been robbed. $1 billion a day is leaving from our coffers and going overseas. There is no sense to any of this until we have a moment of truth with ourselves and our own policymakers. This country is destined and condemned to not only be addicted to oil, but addicted to all the terrible trappings that come with oil. Where there's a will, there will be a way. There is no will. Until that moment comes, there will be no way.